Hello everybody, I'm Gary York. Thank you for watching this YouTube channel, and if you like this video, please subscribe. I'm very excited today because I have with me a longtime military friend and comrade, retired Master Sergeant John Meinholz, who entered the U.S. Army in 1979. He served as a military policeman until retiring as a first sergeant in the year 2000. John has served in Germany in the pre- and post-Cold War, Panama, Operation Desert Storm, Bosnia, Kosovo, Fort Bragg, and Hawaii. John continues his service today, still instructing in the JROTC in Florida in a high school, teaching and training our future Americans and our future defenders of America. John, thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you.
Just to let you know, John and I go way back. We have a lot of military buddies. We have a 300th Military Police Group that was formed by James Leibold, Steve Percival, and Top Meinholz. They formed this group about 13 years ago, I'm going to say, and we've had a military police reunion every year for 13 years, and it's really great to be with your fellow comrades after all these years. I myself, a little bit about my military, I did 8 years active and 2 years reserve. I made it to staff sergeant before I got out of the military and finished a 28.5-year career in corrections in Florida. Love the military. So glad I did the time in the military because I still have friends today that we all get together and have a good time. Today, I want to talk about stress. And the reason is on March 30th of 2019, I think it's only about a week and a half away, John and I, and excuse me if I call him John, no disrespect, Top Meinholz and I are going to be speaking in front of a large group on stress in the workplace. Now, I am going to be speaking on stress in the correctional officer environment. John is going to be speaking on stress in the military when you have to be separated from your family members for long periods of time. And that's what we're going to concentrate on today in this video, when you're in the military and you have to be away from your families and the stress it causes. John, first of all, can you give us some personal insight? You retired from the military and you were away from the family a lot. Can you give us your own personal experience of being away from the family?
Well, I was in the active Army for 20 years, and 11 of those years I was overseas. So, and I count 4 years in Hawaii being overseas because if there was an emergency back CONUS, then that meant that you had to take a 6 or 7 hour plane ride. So, so 11 years overseas, living essentially out of our environment where we grew up. My wife is actually German. And her first trip to the United States was going from Germany to Hawaii, which is quite a culture shock. So I spent 11 years overseas. In many of those cases, we couldn't own our own home. We, either stayed on base or we had rental apartments. Of course, during that time, we were able to raise a family, So in the course of my 20 years, I deployed numerous times. Sometimes it was a pending deployment that you knew about that you could prepare for, but there were times too that it was just kind of a drop of the hat that something had to happen quickly. So one of the things about military families that helps make you a little bit more successful is just being prepared. So that means that your paperwork always has to be in order, powers of attorney, wills, making sure that your spouse's driver's license doesn't expire, just little details like that. So when you do deploy, you can kind of rest a little bit more easy and focus on the job, knowing that everything is fine at home. But having said that, quite honestly, most of the stress related with deployment and being separated from your family isn't necessarily always what it would seem on the soldier. Him or herself. Their mind is so focused on doing the job, it has to be doing the job, staying on task, and it really isn't until the stress sets in really on redeployment. And lots of times the case is, from a lot of people I've talked to and in my own experience, maybe just a little bit of kind of like resentment. So the man or the woman of the house, because there's many female soldiers that are with the male spouse, you come back and it's like, expectation is that everything needs to fall on my shoulders, and the spouse was doing quite fine. So from a service member standpoint, that's kind of something that take into account, that when you come back home, that you just don't automatically try to reassert yourself and continue to let that spouse that was back, in the rear continue to, kind of run things and blend back in. I would say that really, in my experience, most of the stress from a deployment was the pre-deployment phase, kind of knowing that it's coming up, especially if it was something that you were going to be notified maybe months in advance, and it kind of builds, and there's a kind of just a little bit of a cloud hanging over your head, knowing that there's going to soon be that date where you have to finally say goodbye, and lots of cases maybe don't know if you're going to even come back. And then the stress of the redeployment. I think if you've done your job properly during the deployment, of course you get your care packages and you get your letters and you stay in contact, and maybe an occasional phone call in the day. I know, I got out in 2000, but I know today now there's more capability to stay in direct contact with emails and FaceTime and so those kind of things. But so the deployment itself, it doesn't generally result in that much stress. I speak for being deployed, as long as you're getting your nice cards and letters from your kids. The things happen. I'll give you a good example. When I was in Panama for 4 months, the lease on our house expired. Well, we didn't know that, but the original owners wanted to come back, and so in the process of my deployment, my wife had to essentially move the entire house. Luckily, we were at Fort Bragg, which is a big community, lots of other soldiers, and so we made a lot of friends, and she was able to get a little bit of help from some people and move the house. But so when I came back and got in the car to drive back home after we landed at Fort Bragg, I didn't even know where the house was, let alone what the furniture was going to look like. And of course, as soon as I come back and start rearranging pictures or bookshelves, or the furniture becomes an insult to my wife that moved everything in the back of a pickup truck. So like I said, I think the pre-deployment is kind of that impending day of separation, and then some of the things I discussed as far as the redeployment. When I was in Germany and my second tour and started to accelerate in rank and started to be in charge of soldiers, I was able to see how other families dealt with stress. And one of the things, at least in Germany, I can speak for, I'm sure other foreign countries, not say some place like Hawaii, which is of course part of the United States, but soldiers, when they brought their families over, had to be what they called command sponsored, and that meant that you had approval from the command to bring your family, that they would give you assistance with the flight over, with moving, with things like that. But we had a large share of people that just weren't command sponsored, brought their families over, and of course, we were going to still take care of them, and that created a challenge. So there was stress also from the standpoint from a leader dealing with families that sometimes were not prepared. Of course, my career was in military police, and often we would see the results of that stress manifesting itself in a domestic disturbance, or maybe when that spouse was gone, that there was some possibly infidelity or something like that, and so and those kind of issues create a lot of stress, and some people deal with it in lots of different ways. And I would say that probably really, when we say stress in the military family, it's of course it affects the entire family, but I would say the soldier, him or herself, probably has it sometimes the easiest, because like I said, they're focused on the mission.
Very well said. And to take a couple of points that you said, there are wives staying home, taking care of the kids, paying the bills, as you said. And there's also men. We have women in the military, and when they're out deployed, there are men staying at home as well, taking care of the bills, taking care of the house, taking care of the children, dropping the children off at daycare in the morning. You know, it goes both ways in today's Army and in the old Army. There's men and women deployed. So we could have husbands at home just as easy as we could have wives at home, taking care of everything. And you're so right, John. When you get back, you have to ease back in, because they've been running the show at home the whole time, and they've got everything under control, and they've got the ship afloat, and you don't want to rock that boat.
And the other thing I would say too, I had some experience as my son joined the National Guard and deployed a couple of times. So I was on the other side of things, and so I was in the support role. So I got the blue, if you remember from World War II days, the Blue Star Magnet, and was proud to lend support best I can. I came to find out that it was fairly restrictive on what I could do. It was a phone, occasional phone call, but mostly letters and care packages. And I guess that's one thing I would say as far as care packages. It really doesn't matter if it's from your family or if it's one of those that's addressed to any other soldier. It's important for deployed soldiers to know that they're appreciated in doing what they do. I saw that more so than anything when Desert Storm occurred, and I don't think any of us deployed really had a clue on just how much the country was following us. I think that was the year that the NFL put the flags on the back of the helmets, for the first time, and the yellow ribbons around the trees. And I personally felt very proud that was a time that kind of brought our country together, and some satisfaction for a lot of our Vietnam veterans of the era that didn't really get that sense of appreciation when they returned.
Yes, folks, remember, if you know anybody that gets deployed, and even in peacetime when they're overseas and away from home, anything like that, those cards, letters, and care packages mean a lot. It really helps get the troops through the tough times. And Top Mine, I was a guest at your JROTC, and I got to speak to your class, I got to speak to your criminal justice class, and I got to speak to your JROTC students. Right now, you're carrying on the tradition. How long have you been teaching that since you've left the military?
I've been teaching Army Junior ROTC now will be my 19th graduating class, and kind of going back to speaking about stress and deployments. Of course, I'll have to say it was a decision between my wife and I to retire. Of course, you have to be looking at some additional income. Army retirement is a nice benefit, but it's not really enough to continue the lifestyle and raising children. So that was a big decision. So I was glad I was able to immediately get into that job, and I guess most importantly what that job allowed me to do, or didn't allow me to have to do, was hang up my uniform. So I've been able to transition. I know that it's got to be hard, and one day I'll have to do the same thing and basically just take the uniform and put it in the foot locker. But it's allowed me to stay in the military. And the other important thing related to stress is that it wasn't just like putting the brakes on, because anybody that's ever had any experience with high school age students, be it that you're a teacher or you're raising them, they know that to do it right, it can be quite a challenge. So it's kind of kept me on my toes, and it's in the term stress itself can be a good thing, and you can be overstressed, and you can let stress affect you mentally and physically, but a certain amount of stress, I think, in life is important, as long as it's managed to keep you on your toes and keep you fresh and keep you alert. And I've certainly been able to do that with my job. So.
And I want to say one thing. Top Meinholz is doing a great job with these young students. They're 11th graders and 12th graders, the ones that I talk to in both criminal justice and JROTC. And let me tell you something, folks. We have hope for the future of America. These kids, when I talk to them, I talked to them about what their future careers are going to be. Now, many of them said they want to go on to be in the military. Some of them want to go on into law enforcement. Some of them told me they want to be in the FBI. A couple of them said corrections. I didn't get many corrections votes, but a couple of them want to go to corrections. And it's just nice to see these young students with their mind in the right place, headed in the right direction. I thank you, John, and people like you that are getting these kids trained and getting them prepared for life.
Yeah, just to speak a little bit on the junior ROTC program, it's not a recruitment tool at all. It's funded by the Department of Defense, and kind of the best way I describe it is if we're not out there actively trying to recruit these young people to join the military, why do we have it? And I kind of go back to using the analogy that, you know, it's the Department of Defense, and what better way to defend the country by producing people of good character, that are hard workers, that are going to go pay taxes, stay out of trouble, and become good, solid citizens. And so I think it's a wonderful program, and I think that it's been around since 1917. It's in every state. It's all branches are involved. And you know, if people want to join the military, I would say that definitely it's a program that they should make space on their schedule for. But if they don't, then it just becomes a regular classroom of character building, leadership, team building, working together. It's really a cadet-run program when it's run the right way. It means that, you know, the instructors, of course, teach and mentor, but to the standpoint that we allow some latitude and let the cadets make, you know, I always use the analogy mistakes, but in a safe environment before they get out into the actual workforce and learn those mistakes for the first time, and then maybe, you know, cause, you know, loss in productivity, or somebody gets injured on the job. So it's a nice, safe place to learn how to get along with others, basically, is what it comes down to.
And folks, no matter what branch of the service you're in, it doesn't matter. We're all brothers, we're all sisters, we're all for the same cause. Let's support all our military branches. Let's support our young students today in America and get them on the right track. They don't have to join the military, but let's at least get them prepared to get out in the workforce and become productive citizens. Is there anything in closing you'd like to say that we didn't talk about? I mean, we're free to go. There's no time limit. Did I miss something? Is there something you'd like to add at the end?
No, since the central theme was the stress on the families in the military, again, what Gary said, I'd like to reiterate that today's families aren't necessarily, you know, what you might have thought of, say, somebody deploying in World War II, where you got the wife that stayed home and the husband. You know, it could be single parents in lots of cases, you know, and some children. So it's I would say, you know, what relieves some of that stress is being prepared, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go away for 4 months or 6 months or a year. I think every family, regardless if you're in the military or not, needs to, you know, be prepared and, you know, and know, I guess in closing, I'd say this is, and I'm probably guilty of this, you know, be able to share information. I've tried to start doing that recently and have some common storage places where documents are at, but there's still, if, you know, God forbid, if my wife were to go before me, there's still some things that would take me a little while to figure out, you know, how does this bill get paid and that bill get paid. So just, you know, sharing information so that, you know, where, you know, like I said, important documents are at, and knowing, you know, where, you know, how household accounts get settled. That would make, you know, that would relieve a lot of stress in any profession. So.
And folks, let me ask you this. Let's take care of our veterans. Let's take care of our disabled veterans. Let's take care of our homeless veterans. Let's get it going to where our veterans get what they deserve. They fought and defended our country. I don't care if you were peacetime, combat, or deployment. It doesn't matter if you served, you defended our country. We thank all of you. We want you to be safe. And God bless you, and thank you for watching this video. And if you like this video, please subscribe to my YouTube. This will have military videos and correction videos. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here, Top.
Thank you.
I'll cut this part out. They won't see this.
Is that okay?